The West African country of Guinea seems to be the first African country to have taken action against the Chinese racism and violent attacks against Africans, as a video has surfaced allegedly showing arrested and documented Chinese nationals living in the country waiting to be deported. In the video, a Guinean official says, "If the Chinese government does not return our people, we will deport all these Chinese here."
Ils veulent montrer la force. Ils veulent montrer qu'ils sont forts. S'ils ne trouvent pas la solution, autorité ramène pour 5 minutes. Voilà. Comprendre qui est capable de faire. Voilà.
The West African country took the actions following the widely reported mistreatment of Africans in China by the Chinese government officials.
Hi family, welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie. What I want to talk about today is what is going on as far as the outrage coming from Africans in regard to the repression being done against Africans in China. But look at the positive note, and that is that it seems like more than ever, Africans have been waking up globally to the fact that we are all connected and that we're all experiencing similar maltreatment. And it seems to be a unifying force for people who have been so divided by colonialism. So I'm sure all of you know by now, but just as a recap, what's been happening is that in China, a particular province in China, there has been a lot of attacks against Africans, particularly a lot of people who tend to be Nigerian, but really just Africans. They're not attacking them because they're Nigerian, they're attacking them because they're African. And it's been causing a lot of outrage. You see Africans who are living on the streets, people who are not allowed to reside anywhere. They've been kicked out of their apartments, illegally evicted from their apartments because they have been accused of having the coronavirus. Now, understand, although the coronavirus, we know, does not discriminate against color, against people, it's just weird that of all the people, everything that's going on, I mean, we know that the coronavirus started in China, and we also know that Europe is being hit hardest of any other place, and the United States obviously is being hit very hard. But of all the places that are being hit so hard, of all the places that have been in the news in regards to the coronavirus, it's not been Africa. If anything, all people have been saying about Africa is, look out, it's coming to Africa. It's coming to Africa in a few weeks. It's going to be bad. But even though, not to say that there is no risk, obviously there is a risk to every single person. With where there's travel going on in and out of the country, there's a risk to you. But it has been nothing compared to what we have seen in Europe, compared to what we have seen in China. And so it's a little odd that they have felt the need to target Africans. But that just reminds us of the fact that Africans historically, since colonialism, have been the most mistreated people. They have been the most disregarded people. And this is just another reminder that it's not just, because you live here or just because you have this. They are particularly targeting you just because you're African, which is crazy, but something that we're used to by now. Now, with all of this, what has been happening is, of course, there's been a lot of backlash. But this is in light of the fact that Africans, I've been noticing more and more, have been on edge about acts of aggression from outsiders. So, of course, we know in France, there has been a lot of talk, there has been a lot of anger against French colonialism, their colonial policies. And obviously, even recently, we had a French doctor come out and say that they are intending to practice vaccination or to test vaccinations on African people. So people are on edge because we're noticing that more than any other people, you're always attacking us. People are always attacking us. People are always trying to target Africans. And we see it not just from continental Africans from the continent. We see this in the U.S. Why is it that Africans from in the United States, why is it that our health disparities are so ridiculous? Why is it that we're getting hit so hard by the coronavirus? Nothing's making sense. No explanations are making sense. The only explanation that makes sense is that we're all being targeted by the same system at the same time continually. Now, I want to read from an article. This is from Politico. Coronavirus ends China's honeymoon in Africa. Africa was supposed to be China's new stomping grounds. And that's true. That's what people have been talking about all along. They've been saying Africa's the last frontier. China's going into Africa. Africa's going to be the new China. So that's true. You know, people have been talking continually about the fact that China has had such a dominant presence on the continent of Africa. China has spent untold billions in Africa since its emergence as a global power, investing in its natural resources. And I hate when they say investing in its natural resources. The real word should be taking control over the natural resources. Investing in the natural resources means to me that you're investing in the people having their natural resources. But if you're taking the resources for yourself, I don't consider that an investment. But this is all colonial language, so we should understand this by now. Investing in natural resources and underwriting massive infrastructure projects and wooing its leaders. And of course, just a side commentary on that, the investing in infrastructure tends to be loans, and those loans come at a price. So understand that when they say things like investing, more than likely, if you don't have a reason to invest in something and expect a return, you're not just going to be doing something for free. So understand that these are all things that are done for the purpose of abstracting resources from Africa for the benefit of outsiders. Now, the campaign has bought China friends and allies in multilateral institutions such as the United Nations and the World Health Organization, undermining the West's once reliable lock on the post-war world order while fueling its economy back home. But that decades-long quest for influence in Africa was gravely challenged last week when a group of disgruntled African ambassadors in Beijing wrote to the Foreign Affairs Minister Wang Yi to explain that citizens from Togo, Nigeria, and Benin living in Guangzhou, southern China, were evicted from their homes and made to undergo obligatory testing for COVID-19. In some cases, the men were pulled out of their families and quarantined in hotels alone. The incident, which caused widespread discontent both within Africa and among the diaspora, after videos posted on social media showed people of African descent being evicted from their homes, resulting in a rare diplomatic showdown between China and African officials. And when they say rare, it's because, understand, if China is investing so much in Africa, they're essentially pumping money into certain places. Now, if you're a country in Africa, and almost every country in Africa, because it is colonized, has widespread corruption, then when they're funneling those money for those infrastructural projects, what they're actually doing is funneling money to corrupt leaders who pocket the money, and as a result, they get a benefit, but the people don't get a benefit. It is all done for their self-enrichment, but not for the enrichment of the people. And conceivably, in democracy, you're supposed to be doing things for the people. But this is how colonialism and neocolonialism has been able to operate, is because you have these leaders who take money from outsiders, and they say, oh, we're building this for the country, but actually they're building it for their self-enrichment. Meanwhile, they put the country in hundreds of billions of dollars of debt just so that they can enjoy money while the people suffer. So understand that that's actually what's been going on. But it says that these recent events seem to be unraveling the puppets, the African puppets. In one incident, Nigeria's Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi, I cannot pronounce brother's name, but he posted a video of himself summoning Chinese Ambassador Zhao Pingjian to his office, where he expressed displeasure about a Nigerian man who's evicted from his home. While nobody expects China to lose its place in Africa's biggest bilateral lender and trade partner, analysts and African diplomats say that there is a distinct possibility of lasting damage. Now, here's the part I really want y'all to focus on. Reluctance from China to endorse a G20 decision to suspend Africa's debt payments until the end of the year has exacerbated the sense of frustration, they said. Now, this is important to remember. So Africa and China, we've been told that their relations are so positive, and of course it's because it's a debtor-lender relationship. And the real telling nature of this relationship is that as Africa is facing some economic hardship, they are seeking to not have to pay their loans back to outsiders for a year. And China, which is supposed to be the friend to Africa, is saying, no, you're not going to be able to forestall these payments. We need those payments. That shows you what the real relationship was. Like I said, we're told, oh, these loans, they're low interest, that we're trying to invest in Africa and all these types of things. But whenever it becomes too much for the people, too much for the countries where they just cannot pay them, they're not okay with actually doing the right thing. I mean, you have banks in America that are more charitable than the Chinese in this instance, that say, okay, you actually can't pay it. All right, fine, just pay us back next year. No, they're not for that. They're actually expecting payments despite the fact that it's going to cause economic hardship on the African people who have been saddled with all of this debt. So understand that there's no such thing as a friend who benefits from your demise. If China has been benefiting from Africa being poor, Africa being underdeveloped, so to say, Africa not having control of its resources, if they're benefiting from that, what makes you think that they would give up the benefit for your benefit? That's not what they want. If that's the one thing I could get to people to understand, they don't want a free Africa. They don't want an Africa that's economically free from foreign exploitation. From foreign exploitation. They don't want an Africa that's able to sustain itself, that doesn't need to borrow. They don't want that. They want an Africa that's in shackles. They want an Africa that's dependent. They want an Africa that can't survive without them. That's what they really want. They're not going to say that. They're going to act like they're trying to give you opportunities. But the fact is that they're going to benefit from your exploitation. They're going to benefit from your condition. And when it's all over, you think you had a friend, but actually you had an enemy, which is why Minister Malcolm X used to always say, you should be more willing to deal with a wolf than a fox, because a wolf, you know up front, this wolf is trying to eat me. This wolf is aggressive. This wolf wants me dead. This wolf looks at me as dinner for tonight. The fox, however, will be very friendly. It might play with you a little bit. It might give you some kind words. But all the while, the fox is still going to eat you. The difference is that the wolf, you know up front what its agenda is. With the fox, you find out later when it's too late. We already know what the agenda was when colonialism was formalized. But when colonialism is neocolonialism, that is, technically you're free, but instead we have a colonial infrastructure going on behind the scenes, then we're in a different position, because we're thinking that these people are our friends. We're thinking that these people want to invest in our infrastructure, want to invest in our natural resources. That's what they're telling us. They're telling us things like, we want you to have a democracy, and we want you to have free economy. We want you to have all these nice things. We want you to have development. We want you to have these nice skyscrapers like we have. They're telling you these things, but they're telling you these things because they want you to be in a trance and not understanding what's really going on behind the scenes. And that is that you are being more and more crippled by their actions because you are being exploited. So if you could understand anything, stop trusting these entities, the World Bank, the IMF, all these entities that are saying that they have your best interest. If you're having my best interest means that you profit from my poverty, that means that your interest and my interest cannot be the same. So I just wanted to say that to set the record straight. All right, let's go on. So this is interesting. There's been a lot of tension with the relationship. I think both, oh, this is a quote. I'm actually going to scroll down some more. I'm sorry. Okay, so China officials have moved quickly to seal the emerging rift. Ambassador Luz, okay, I can't pronounce this, Beijing's head of mission to the African Union, released a photo of himself giving a socially distanced elbow bump to his African counterpart while distancing the Beijing government from authorities in Guangzhou. Okay, so this is what we're used to, right? We're going to do things. We're going to enact policies that are going to abstract from you. We're going to practice discrimination and racism against your people inside of our country. And when it comes to ways that we can actually address these things, we're not going to actually get rid of these things. We're not going to actually stop exploiting you. We're going to give you an elbow bump with an African and say, oh, clearly I'm not racist, right? This is the type of things that have been happening so much. This happens all the time, every single place where Africans are. And all it is symbolism, because Africans, we've been taught that symbolism should be sufficient for us as far as progress. Symbolism is never anything except for symbolism, meaning it doesn't mean anything. It's a symbol of something. Now, whether the symbol is a reality, that's two different things. What I want is a reality that reflects the symbol that you're trying to give me. I don't want a black president in the United States to be a symbol of progress. I want progress to be a symbol of progress. I don't want a Harriet Tubman on my dollar bill to be a symbol of black emancipation. I want emancipation to be the symbol of black emancipation. But symbolism is used to avoid actually dealing with the circumstances and to basically put a mask over it and to pretend that you are okay with the people, that you love the people, even though your policies are hurting the people. It's just sad that this is the type of stuff that continues, not just in America, not just in Africa, every single place in the world, that symbols are looked at as progress. And some people, the saddest part is some people actually fall for these things. Some people actually feel better when they see symbols of black progress rather than actually seeing it for themselves in their lives. At the same time, I think the name is Zhang Mingjing, political counselor at the mission, downplayed the controversy in comments to Politico. That's another strategy, downplay and act like nothing happened. Beijing had championed a debt initiative agreed upon by the G20, he said, and is committed to taking all possible steps to support the poor. As to the recent turmoil in Guangzhou, he said, the rock-solid Chinese-Africa friendship will not be affected by isolated incidents. I'm just going to scroll down off of that. I'm going to scroll down to something else that was said by President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, because he said that the ill treatment of African nationals in China was inconsistent with the excellent relations that exist between China and Africa, dating back to China's support during the decolonization struggle in Africa. And that's no, we should know by now that historically that there was a Cold War that happened and that America and the West were trying to maintain colonization. And while Russia and China weren't outwardly trying to enforce colonialism, they were trying to basically, their main objective was to destroy the control that the United States and other Western countries had in Africa. But their agenda was not independence, African independence. That's two different things. You could be against Western colonialism and not for the independence of African people. But for Cyril Ramaphosa to say that means that he hasn't been paying attention, because there have been many instances in the same region, I believe it's pronounced Guangzhou, in China, of Africans being targeted. This is not something that is new. This is only something that is being brought to your doorstep right now. There's been a lot of cases, I believe it's the same place. There's a Nigerian student who was killed that I reported on. I mean, there's just been a lot of instances. And little commentary from the people who are in power in Africa actually addressing the racism that has been experienced by their people. But to wrap this up, I think this is great. Obviously not the racism, obviously not the exploitation and colonialism, but the fact that we are more now than ever waking up. Like, we're really waking up. Because I remember probably, a year ago I report on China, and it seemed like everyone was kind of like, oh, we don't want to do anything. We can't do anything about this. We can actually address it. And here we are now today. We have a lot of people who are in African continent standing up and actually saying, no, you're not going to keep doing this. You're not going to keep taking from us. You're not going to keep exploiting us. And this just was not going to happen a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever. Because the fact is that, unfortunately, we need these things to happen in order to have us understand the nature of the relationships that we have with these other people. Now, I bring this up, the instances with China abroad, and obviously that's happening in Africa, and then obviously the French colonialism, the colonial tax, which has been changed. I won't say it has been thwarted, but it's been changed in a way that is trying to become more covert. And Africans, more now than ever, you see them speaking out against French colonialism and Chinese colonialism. And I tell you, it's only a matter of time before we start speaking out against all neocolonialism, because we understand these are not isolated incidents. These are trends. These are systems that are in place. These are ways to ensure that we are kept in a position that we are in for a long time. So I say all this to say that we should be happy and feeling some type of pride in the fact that we as a people are starting to wake up. It's going to be hard to deny. You know, when people say that they're against Pan-Africanism, I mean, it's just so hard for you to deny. How do you deny the fact that every single place where we are, we're all facing hardship? I mean, look at the coronavirus. Of every single place in the world, where do we hear the worst outcomes? It's always with African people. If the coronavirus does anything to wake us up to that fact, the fact that we're always hearing about Black people in the United States dying needlessly, dying at twice the rate as white America from a virus that was not even here like a couple months ago. But the fact that we keep hearing about Africans being targeted for vaccination experimentation and now being targeted for racism for a disease that has little to nothing to do with being African. This, if anything, should really wake you up. I mean, if this doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will, to the fact that we are in a Pan-Africanist, we are in a struggle of, you could say Pan-Europeanism, there's a I would say imperialism, there's a struggle. And if you don't wake up and join the Pan-Africanist struggle, you're going to be continuing to be in the shadows of what's going on. You're not going to be woke up to the fact that, hey, you're fighting the same enemy, you're fighting the same enemy, we're all fighting exploitation, why not fight it together? You're going to be continuing to fight your own battles with limited impact. So I hope this wakes our people up. I see it's waking so many of us up, and I just wanted a positive video because I talk a lot about unfortunate things with our people a lot of the times on this channel, but it's always good to commend when we're making progress. You know, you might say, oh, is it really progress? Yes, it's progress, because as Kwame Ture used to point out, we're not going back. You can't undo this. You can't undo what we learned about Chinese racism. You can't undo what we learned about the French doctors who were plotting to test vaccines on African people. You can't unlearn what you learned about the French colonial tax. We can't unlearn these things. So since we can't unlearn them, we're more and more woke, we're more and more appalled, and we're reacting. It's always good to react to your oppression. When you get to the point when you no longer have a reaction, that is the saddest place to be. And for a long time that was us, but now we're starting to actually feel, we're starting to react, and I believe we're going to start organizing on a global scale. So that's all I have for this. I hope you guys are doing well and safe. I will see you all in the next video.